and Assistant Chief Lundgren from the Spokane Police Department. Our intent here today is to talk to you about Measure 1 and what we think it is going to provide the citizens of Spokane County. We've already started to hear a lot in this community about what Measure 1 is and what it isn't. Measure 1 is providing the citizens of Spokane and the voters of Spokane to decide what public safety looks like in Spokane County for the next 30 years. You'll hear opponents to the measure talk about a jail and a lack of a cohesive plan. Measure 1 is far more than just a correctional facility. Everybody who talks about the state of public safety in Spokane County and talks about the Spokane County Jail and Detention Center acknowledges that we need a new detention facility in Spokane County. We need to update the detention facility we have here in the downtown campus, and we need to update and replace the Geiger Corrections Facility. We also need to significantly invest in other areas of criminal justice in Spokane County. You have heard a lot about smart justice programs, about therapeutic courts, about diversion programs. Measure 1 will provide funding for us to be innovative in all of those areas in Spokane County. Public safety relies heavily on accountability. The criminal justice system in this country has relied on accountability from its inception. It's the bedrock. When people commit crimes in our communities, they have to be held accountable. A modern criminal justice system holds people accountable while also providing avenues for people to better themselves through education, through receiving therapy to change behavior, whether that's substance use disorder treatment or mental health treatment. The criminal justice system has always been an avenue for offenders to change behavior. Over time, and in the last 20 years here in Spokane County, our criminal justice system has not been able to keep up with the demand our community has placed on it. You are repeatedly seeing people being arrested in our community and booked into the Spokane County Jail with dozens of prior felony convictions, and many times being charged with dozens of new felonies, only to be released back into our community on their own recognizance or with a very low bond. Our jail population today is 872 inmates this morning. The capacity for the Spokane County Jail was designed to be 462 40 years ago. Today, there were 675 people in the Spokane County Jail in the downtown facility. There was 171 people at Geiger. Due to staffing challenges and the condition of the building at Geiger, we have capacity for 178 inmates out there, and we are at 171. There's also only certain types of people who can be housed at Geiger, but we still only have 7 available beds out there. We are challenged right now in Spokane County to provide meaningful accountability in the criminal justice system. We've made great strides to kind of counteract some of the bad policies that have been present in our state the last couple of years. With the Blake fix that came through the legislature this year, we can now start arresting people for possession of controlled substance tomorrow. It's a gross misdemeanor. The Spokane County Jail largely does not have the capacity for us to book any of those people that we might arrest for possession of a controlled substance right now. Measure 1 will allow us to build a facility that is both safe and humane, and also allow us to provide treatment options and education options and the capacity to get people the help they need. And it will allow us to have a bed waiting for those who will not go seek treatment on their own. Accountability is at the core of public safety. And Measure 1 will allow us to make the proper investments over the next 30 years to change the way Spokane County currently looks. I will now turn my time over to Commissioner Cuney, who is going to talk a lot about the nuts and bolts of Measure 1. Commissioner Cuney.
Thank you, and thank you, John, for calling this press conference today. I think it's really important for us to get that information out to our citizens. So, good afternoon. I'm Mary Cuney, County Commissioner, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners, and representing District 4. I'm going to share my perspective today on why we're seeing, what we're seeing the community needs are, and then get to the details of Measure 1. The community needs, as John stated, the sheriff stated, to start with, we have a growing population. Anytime we have population growth, we know that we need critical new infrastructure to keep up with that. Think schools, roads and bridges, and firehouses. And Spokane County has been growing. In 1986, when the jail was built, our population was about 350,000 people. Today, we're currently at over 550,000. As the sheriff covered, we also are unfortunately seeing a rise in violent crime in our communities and neighborhoods. At the same time, our civil and criminal courts are congested and our jails routinely over capacity. That puts our community and our law enforcement officers at risk. We are also seeing skyrocketing drug and alcohol addiction and increasing mental health needs. These needs aren't just big needs, they're urgent needs. That is why this ballot measure is on the ballot in November, because it is truly an urgent need that we have right now. So with Measure 1, I'll talk briefly about that and how it's structured, and then what it has the ability to fund. We can find a lot of information if you want to go to our website, SpokaneCounty.org/Measure1, and you can get a lot of the information that you want and that we're talking about here today. I don't know if we've got it up there. But on the website, you'll find the text of the measure itself, the background on the facilities planning, what Measure 1 has the ability to fund, and a lot more. So please go to the website, and I believe there's also a handout that we have today for you as well. So if approved, Measure 1 would authorize the county to impose additional 0.2% countywide sales and use tax. That means for every $10 that's spent in our community, 2 cents would go to our new criminal justice system. 60% of those funds collected will go to Spokane County, and 40% of those funds collected will go to the cities. So not just to the city of Spokane, but to all the cities and towns in a proportionate nature of population for those communities. And again, let me emphasize that Measure 1 revenues must be, I say must, be used for criminal justice, public safety, and behavioral health purposes. We know that some of the details of what Measure 1 can fund. So let's talk about the criminal justice. It's true that we believe Measure 1 can help improve our detention facilities. You can find many of those details on the website and in the handout. But Measure 1 has the ability to fund more than just detention facilities. When it comes to criminal justice, it has the ability to fund programs and wraparound services for individuals in custody to help equip them with the life skills, preparation for them for community reentry, and to reduce recidivism. Some of the program's options and some that we'd be expanding upon are drug and alcohol treatment, job readiness and job skills, communication skills, anger management, parenting classes, and getting a GED. One of those things that we look at is the success of our stabilization center that we're already seeing, that is a voluntary facility. We want to bring that into our jail system and be able to provide those services for those critical people in need within our system. Other eligible criminal justice items Measure 1 can fund include overdue investments in things like courtrooms, judges and court staff, prosecutors, public defenders, domestic violence programs, and therapeutic courts. We currently have several therapeutic courts that we would be able to then continue to enhance and make a better diversion opportunity for citizens that are in our system. Public safety improvements. Measure 1 has the ability to fund law enforcement officers, training and co-deployed behavioral health teams with police and fire. On the behavioral health side, Measure 1 can expand things like our successful crisis stabilization center, including for individuals in custody at our detention facility, and community and in-custody therapeutic behavioral health programs. The bottom line, I want to emphasize that Measure 1 is a lot more than just a facility. In addition to the list of programs I shared, we can also look at investments recommended by the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council. as they're the experts in this field, and we'll be looking to them to provide those additional opportunities for us to do programs in smart justice and other reforms that we need to do in our criminal justice system. If we go to work as a region in a collaborative way, we can start to tackle these challenges head on and together. I truly see Measure 1 as providing hope to our community, to be safe in their neighborhoods. Also, offering services to individuals in our system in our community who are in need. It is that hope that I really see Measure 1 being able to do. Provide safety and get those services and needs so people can get back into our community. I want to say thank you, and now I'll turn it over to Mayor Nadine Woodward.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. I'm just going to give you a little bit of perspective from the city side of things. Measure 1 really is about public safety. And as mayor, when I am out in the community, I hear from community members who say public safety is their #1 priority. Hands down, #1 priority. And they want more people, offenders, to be held accountable. And many of them are victims, say, you know, we've been left out of the equation completely. We don't feel like we have a voice. The thing that I like about Measure 1 is that this gives the community a voice in what they want to see for public safety. This isn't a tax that's being pushed on anybody. Our voters get an opportunity to have their voice heard on this issue. As the sheriff was saying, the last 2 years, we've spent a lot of time making corrections in public safety. After the reform measures, police reform measures, were passed in the legislature in 2021. I, along with my police chief, have spent a majority of my time advocating to get the tools back for our police officers. And when it comes to the Blake decision, getting that permanent fix, I got 27 other mayors from across the state to join me in requiring tougher guardrails to compel people to get the help that they need. And we were successful in getting that gross misdemeanor. But in the 2 years that we have decriminalized drugs in our state, Washington now leads the nation for drug overdoses. 3,000 last year. We're #1. We have to get people help. And if detention is part of that, that's got to be an option that we consider. But more than anything, it's really about accountability, and it's about a facility that has the programs in it, because we need to have a holistic and a rehabilitative approach to people that go through the criminal justice system, whether that's mental health. I just took a tour of the jail a couple of weeks ago. Didn't even realize that our jail is the only jail in the state that has a licensed mental health program in it. They're doing great work, but they need more. They need substance abuse programs. They need job skills training. People can get their GEDs. We have to rehabilitate people so that they can become productive members of our community when they're released. And then that's what the goal is here. You know, when I'm out at roll call with our police officers, the #1 frustration that I hear from them is that, you know what, Mayor, we're out there doing our job. We're working hard to keep the community safe. We're making arrests. And when people are booked and then quickly released, we got our officers in their cars, not even completing the report on that case. And those individuals are walking right out the door. How demoralizing is that for our officers who are working hard every single day to keep our community safe, only to see offenders not be held accountable for the crimes they're committing in our community? So what I'm excited about this measure too is that the portion that the city will receive about 29% of that 40% that goes to the cities. That's about $6 million a year for the city of Spokane. Some of it will go back to the jail. But this is an opportunity for the city to be able to fund more police officers. And I've said this many, many times. We have a huge shortage of police officers. We need about 100 more just to maintain the national average for a city our size. And our officers are working hard. They're working overtime. They need help. And our community wants a safe community. So that's why I'm here to talk about Measure 1. And now I'm going to have our Chief Longren, our Assistant Chief Longren, talk about more of the officer experience and how this would change for them.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to speak a little bit about the current conditions of the jail as our officers experience it each and every day. So the booking area, like the rest of the facility, is it was built at the time where we had a much smaller population and a smaller criminal activity level in the county. So our booking area oftentimes will get overrun with activity during peak times in our shift, where we need to be able to get someone booked into jail and get our officers back on the street. So when that happens, officers are left waiting outside the facility to be able to book someone in, sometimes for over an hour, just to be able to book their prisoner into the facility. And so when this happens during these peak times in our community, we have officers who are out of service longer than they need to be. Suspects are then too often being released shortly after booking, as the mayor already spoke to. And this seriously impacts our ability to change behavior and to keep the community safe. For serious crimes, we don't have a facility that allows the capacity to hold offenders after first appearance. This is a random sampling of some of the criminal incidents where in the last 30 days offenders have been OR'd, released on their own recognizance without paying any bail. Vehicle prowling, obstruction, and theft, felony assault, including DV assaults, residential burglary, violation of a court order, reckless endangerment, possession of a stolen motor vehicle, driving under the influence and unlawfully carrying a firearm, unlawful imprisonment, harassment, burglary and possession of a stolen vehicle, stalking and residential burglary. And that's just some of the ORs that have happened in the past 30 days. Not every crime, not every situation that a law enforcement officer responds to requires that someone be arrested. Not every situation requires that someone be booked. But we need to have a consistent ability to employ that tool, to have accountability in this county and in our city. Our region has a huge lack of rehabilitation options for those in the criminal justice system. There's a significant need for additional mental health programs, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and other programming so that we can get ahead of this and we can return people into a productive capacity in society and break this recidivism cycle. We have a very difficult time changing behavior in this community and to stop recidivism when we don't have the capacity to be able to have a certain and available opportunity to detain criminals. Thank you, and I believe we'll take questions now.
So real quick before we do some questions, I think there's some other statistics that would be helpful for folks to understand. Full on 14% of the people we book into the Spokane County Jail, that's all law enforcement, are released immediately without spending any time in the jail. It's an administrative release. And I think it's important for the public to understand that we don't have a policy, and we've never been able to have a policy of booking everyone that we arrest. We have largely not booked anybody who wasn't being booked on a felony since I started here 26 years ago. Now, there are certain booking exceptions for misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor, domestic violence charges, and some DUIs and people with some other exceptions. But largely, it is just felonies that we're booking into the Spokane County Jail. And again, other crimes where even the state legislature has acknowledged that a custodial arrest, is probably the safest option for the community. Full on 14% of those people are being released immediately due to the capacity issues of the jail. And just as Chief Lundgren acknowledged and stated, accountability is at the core of the criminal justice system. And right now, we don't have the systems in place to effectively administer justice and to change behavior. Again, this is not about a facility. This is about all the programming and all of the other options that we have to employ to change behavior and to ultimately make our communities safer places to be. Now, questions, please.
Question for Commissioner Cooney and Mayor Woodward. this measure's been talked about for quite some time. It wasn't overnight. You guys have done a lot of work to get it to where it is today. So in your respective roles, was it a surprise to you to get this letter from City Council asking to delay it when we've known it's going to be on the ballot for so long?
I can say, yes, it was a surprise. There's been some discussion about delaying the measure, and at the commission meeting, we took a vote to say we can't continue those discussions. We need to move forward with this. This is important, urgent need right now in our community, and so, yeah, it was a surprise.
I'll just say on my part, I wasn't necessarily surprised, but we definitely need to move forward. There is an immediacy about responding to public safety in the way that we want to provide, I would say, public safety. I'll just tell you that at the city, you know, we have a municipal court, and we deal with misdemeanors. But nobody with a misdemeanor is going to the jail right now. So we, even if this is passed and we have a new jail in 5 years, we need to be doing something now. So we're actually having those conversations at the city about how can we hold people in detention at a misdemeanor level, because we're not able to do that right now. And those are the quality of life crimes, but those are the kind of crimes that impact you every single day. This is trespassing, this is property crime, this is car break-ins, this is car prowling. All those things that people are being booked and they're walking right out. And we've got to bring back accountability into the system. And so we're having those serious discussions at the city, even as this discussion is happening right now for Measure 1.
Question?
Oh,
maybe, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, for perhaps Sheriff, if you could talk to this, speaking of what the mayor just spoke about with drug arrests and wanting to get more substance use treatment into the jail itself. Can you speak about how the new facilities would be able to offer what specific types of treatment might be available specifically for people who are on those lower level crimes?
Well, and I think there is such a challenge with getting folks who are addicted to controlled substances into treatment. What I would personally support us doing with this new facility is having the capacity and the staff to help people detox from substance use disorder. If anybody has seen or has a family member or a friend and observed the withdrawal symptoms that come, particularly with the fentanyl issues that we're dealing with, it can be an excruciating experience for the people who are detoxifying from that addiction. I think we need to have as much clinical and medical support for those people who are being booked into the jail who might be withdrawing. I think we have supports in place now, but of course we could always do better. And so I think having the ability to stabilize people in a correctional facility and then hopefully move them off into treatment. And because remember, prior to a conviction, any participation in any kind of programming is voluntary. And hopefully we can offer programs and motivation for people to voluntarily take place in a treatment program. And hopefully we have a facility that will, number one, be able to help them stabilize, and number two, offer an incentive to go out and get the help they need. Yes.
You spoke about staffing and how that's been a consistent issue kind of in a lot of different places, staffing these jail facilities, but this measure will obviously be adding more beds, which will need more staffing. How will you plan to address the issue that we already have now?
So the plan that is in place right now, because the current jail facility was never built to house the number of people who are there. Frankly, Geiger was never designed with the intent of having it be a correctional facility. With the new design and the new plan, we actually won't have to add any more correctional bodies to staff and safely administer all the programs there. So that is a huge benefit. Staffing is a challenge. It will always be a challenge going forward. Certainly law enforcement and corrections are not alone in that. But with this new plan, with this new facility, we're not going to have to increase the number of jail staff, but by maybe a handful, depending on what programs are put in place.
Can I ask how that could be possible if you're adding upwards of 500 beds to a facility?
Design and the ability to supervise more people from a centralized location. I think you had a question, sir?
Have there been any formal conversations between the county and cities in the county about how the cities would spend their portion of this tax?
Sure.
So there's been presentations that have been done to the cities around within Spokane County. I know City Council's gotten one, the Mayor's Cabinet has gotten it, the City of Spokane Valley. And so those conversations are going on. But until we know that this measure is going to pass, we have time to figure those things out. Because if the measure doesn't pass, then we need to go back to the drawing board. We will look at it again in the future because, again, this is an urgent need, and so we will continue to go on this path.
Just to be clear, other than construction of a new facility, we have no indication from the City of Spokane or Spokane Valley how they would be spending their portion of this tax, correct?
Correct. So those dollars come in starting in April. If it passes in November, April would be when the first time that those dollars would start to come in. And again, it's 0.2% on the sales tax. So what Spokane County will be doing is we'll be using our bonding capacity to actually bond the facility costs out into the future. The cities, though, I don't believe the City of Spokane has the bonding capacity unless they go to a vote of the citizens. And so they will just be using those dollars as they come in. And there's going to be conversations as to do they want to participate in the cost of the jail, or will there be additional fees as people come in.
For just members of the public who might not have a ton of experience with finance and bonding, could you explain why it is necessary, why the interest payments are so high, over $100 million in order to build? Why is it impossible for the county to say, dip into its reserves to try to cut some of those interest costs? Could you explain why it's kind of unavoidable to accrue those interest costs?
Well, as we're seeing right now, we're in a time of rising interest rates. Had we done this years ago, we wouldn't have the interest rates where they're at today. And so we just have to take those into account. It's just part of managing, the facility and trying to get the construction costs, because we can't, the general contractor is going to take payments. They want to be paid as they go. And so that's why we have to bond and incur those interest costs to do it for the future. Our revenues our reserves are not such that we could use those to finance the entire project. So it'll require us to go out for bonding.
Commissioner, I think you had an important point there, how the regional governments, the cities themselves will determine how they want to use those funds themselves. And so I think this question is directed towards the mayor a little bit. Is there a decision to, is there any wiggle room to say, hey, help contribute funds to constructing the jail, hiring more officers? What's kind of your priority right now?
Well, and that's what I mentioned, is that there is an expectation that for our share of Measure 1, that there would be a payment to the county for criminal justice services. However, it won't be the entire $6 million that we expect to get on an annual basis. We have options and opportunities with the other funding that comes from this measure to hire more police officers, which we know we drastically need. I've advocated at the state and the federal level for more funding directly allocated to cities for such a need, but that hasn't come through. So this will be a great opportunity for the city to be able to hire much needed officers. And I think wherever I go, that community is very supportive of hiring more officers.
Is that something for sure on the table?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
When we say there's an expectation for the cities to sort of share the cost of the facility, is that expected to come through nightly bed rates that they pay to book people into the facility, or is that upfront for the construction costs?
I would say that's an item that we'll be determining as we find out if the measure passes.
Let me clarify something. So I think it's important to clarify as far as where we might bill for a bed stay. That is only for gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors can the county bill out for jail bed stays. The county is responsible for all felony prosecutions, all felony jail stays, all felony prosecutions. And that's why you see the different proportions of the sales tax measure being what they are, is because the county bears the larger burden of administering criminal justice in the county.
Commissioner Cooney, what can you say to assure voters that while there are kind of, it's a there's some contingencies with this measure of will the voters even accept it? How can you assure voters that it's ready as it is, especially in light with city council members saying we're ready for this?
Well, and the mayor can address that as well, but we're ready for it. We know we need to do this. I would say we have a plan. Is it 100% in the details? No. But you know what? We're at 5% design, but until we know we have this measure passed, I don't want to spend county money on, something that we may not do. So we've got to be fiscally conservative with how we're spending those dollars and what we're looking at. And so we know we have a plan for the facility. We know we have plans for programming. We also, it'll take 5 years for this to be built, which gives us a little bit more time too for what exactly those programmings are. And we'll be looking to the Regional Law and Justice Council and those smart justice programs that they want to bring forward. So there is time, and for everyone to say that it has to be done today. I mean, if you build something on your house, you're looking at a lot of things, but then things change and adjust. And so that's what we're doing here. But we have a plan, and we know how we want to use those dollars. And again, those dollars have to be, as I said earlier, must be spent on criminal justice, public safety, and behavioral health.
Are there contingency plans being made currently if the measure doesn't pass, and what's being done to prepare if the measure does pass to address the current issues at the county jail in Geiger?
If the measure doesn't pass, we will come again. I mean, it's an urgent need that we have, and I really want people to feel safe in our community. And for them to feel safe and be safe in our community, we need a new facility.
But are there any conversations about how to adjust the current issues in the facility, try to address maybe more corrections officers, implementing programs in there? I understand that you guys are saying the facility itself is difficult to provide that, but are there contingency plans?
There are some contingency plans, but currently we're down detention officers. That's happening across the nation. We're not the only county having that issue. And so, you can have some contingency plans and the detention services staff are already doing that. We're looking at it on a daily basis. Geiger, what I don't want to do is spend millions of dollars at Geiger to get it up to standards for us then to have a new facility and have not spent that money wisely, because, that is on leased property out in the West Plains that, again, we have to retire that facility. And so that's part of why having this new facility downtown is really important.
Did I hear you correctly? If it doesn't pass, you'll come again? Does that mean you'll propose a similar measure once again?
I can't speak for the entire board because we haven't discussed it as an entire board, but I certainly, because of the urgent need, I plan to make sure it comes forward again.
Chief, you were talking about how, from the perspective of law enforcement, it's frustrating when individuals who you believe should be staying in jail are being released immediately. Do we have any data that reflects when a judge is releasing someone they otherwise would not want to release? When judges are releasing people that, in your opinion, should not be released, is there any indication from the judges that, hey, if we had the capacity, we put them in jail. If we don't, we're putting them out. Are we tracking that in any way?
So judges don't typically make those type of comments. But in looking at the behavior patterns and what we've seen over historically on what types of offenses have been held in pretrial fashion versus what are being held today, it's becoming apparent that our capacity is impacting and driving that decision in some cases instead of public safety, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing.
Is that something that Superior Court and District Court judges have acknowledged?
Not to my knowledge, but I think that that would be a question for them, and they don't typically give a lot of rationale as to why they make the decisions that they do.
Another question. This tax measure would be bringing in revenue for 30 years. A lot of the things that you guys are talking about sound like things that you would hope would become permanent fixtures of our criminal justice system. Obviously, 3 decades from now is a long time, but you're talking about passing a tax that would be supporting a need that wouldn't end after 30 years. So do you envision this becoming a perpetual tax if voters do approve it?
Well, obviously there are stipulations in place, and the voters would get another opportunity 30 years from now to decide whether the funding was used appropriately or not. So hopefully, if we get the facility correctly built and get programming done effectively, hopefully we'll reduce demand in our community for those kinds of services. I think that's the point. When we start talking about research-based programming, evidence-based programming, if we implement things that actually show that they work, then we will reduce the number of people we need to incarcerate and hopefully reduce the number of people who are recidivating and committing crime. You know, we start talking about putting in programming that attacks the problem upstream, so to speak, where we're changing behavior in future generations and maybe they never start committing crime in the first place. You know, hopefully we can get a system in place in the next 30 years that reduces the crime in our community, not where we find ourselves today, where we haven't made a significant investment in the right policies, we haven't made a significant investment in the entire criminal justice system and the behavioral health system, to where you only have to look around our downtown areas and in our populated areas and into our neighborhoods to see just how crime is affecting everybody in our neighborhoods. I think it's something that people need to understand is we can make this investment here and now, or we can keep paying for this in the amount of property loss that we have, the insurance rates we're paying, the amount of, you can't go, to certain places in this county and leave anything of value in your car without expecting that it will be stolen, that your car will be damaged and that it's stolen. That's not the Spokane I grew up in. And if we invest this money from Measure 1 correctly, we can make a huge impact on public safety in Spokane. But we have to start today. We've waited 15 years longer to do this than we should have. And our communities show it.
I kind of wanted to piggyback off of this question about judicial release, and because you talked about administrative release, that about 14% are being released by jail staff just because they're at capacity.
Yes.
How are jail staff able to sort of triage that situation and make sure that the people who seem to be on the higher risk level are getting booked in versus other people that are brought in at the same time?
So the jail staff have been given the authority to make some administrative discharges, depending on what the charge they're booked in. Right, they are given a certain number of charges that they're allowed to give them a court date, set them up, and release them. And it's not. I mean, there's probably, and I think Director Sparber could probably speak a little more in detail about that. But it's authority they've been given by the judiciary to do that in a certain narrow number of cases.
So essentially, if someone comes in who seems like they need to be booked in, someone else is already in the facility, they might be able to say, we can send this person home earlier. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, actually, a lot of times when the 14%, whatever charge they're being booked in on is one of the charges that the judiciary has given the jail staff the authority to discharge on without seeing a judge. And they're given a court date, usually a first appearance date. And again, I don't know the exhaustive list of what those are. But on the other hand, our jail capacity is such now that when a judge decides that someone needs detention, they have to make a decision. Somebody has to go out the other end. It isn't like we have a lot of vacant bed space where they can book in 25 people today without having to let 25 other people out. And our judges have to make that decision. And while they generally will not discuss it, as Chief Lundgren said, it's got to be part of their decision-making matrix. It has to, because we're just at capacity.
The union representing the corrections officers co-signed on the letter with Council President Kinnear and Council Members Cohn. Have there been conversations with the union since?
I have not personally. I do believe that there have been conversations with the union leadership. I would invite the media to get a hold of their union leadership and get it from them. Talk to them directly and find out, if they understand what the plan is and if they would support it.
With 40% going to these cities here, and it kind of seems like it's an unknown, as we just addressed, it's a plan that's developing still. How confident are we that this is the correct amount for the sales tax if 40% of this doesn't really have a specific area where it's going here?
I would say because of the detention facility that we need to build, that's how we know that we need to have those dollars now.
But
So
the 40% doesn't have a specific.
we're planning on ensuring that we, based on the 60% that Spokane County will be getting, that we have the dollars then to bond and be able to have the new facility. So what the cities get, with that 40%, I don't have any, any way to, be part of the decision making. That is up to each city to determine how they do that. Again, will we have discussions as to what we think those needs are and how we can look at it as a community? Yes, but that'll come after November.
But that sales tax number was developed based on the cost that you need for the entire facility.
Yes, for our 60%.
Okay.
I think this one might be for Mike.
I thought I was getting it off my
The last, and you might have already talked about this, I don't remember, but at least the last 2 jails that Spokane County has had, people have been talking about the new one being inadequate for over a decade already, which means that in the minds of many, the lifespan should only have been about 30 years. And I believe the jail before that was only 20 or 30 years as well. So we know in the year 2023 or whenever this one would be built, how long would we be expecting it to last? What a lifespan of the new facility be?
We projected it out for 30 years, on a 30-year prediction, yeah.
Right.
So,
What's the timeline again, construction-wise?
it'll start construction, if all goes as planned, Measure 1 passes, like 2028, basically, in that neighborhood.
Right.
Any more questions? Go ahead.
Effectively, how many more beds would we have once Geiger is closed and the new building's open? Effectively, how much would the capacity go by?
Neighborhood of,
It's up on the board.
it's up on the one thing, I think it's a neighborhood of about 800 additional beds. Not exactly, but it's in that neighborhood.
Do you want me to help out?
What's that?
Do you want me to help out with this?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at the slide up here, I think some important things to recognize is that as additional housing, the blue housing is what we predict that we're going to need moving forward. There is a shelled-in portion at the top which could be used for other purposes if we want to, or additional population, going back to what the sheriff had indicated about how well we do with the policies and moving forward with some of the criminal justice improvements. And then the community correction center is the green building there. But going back to what Chief Lundgren was talking about, our Sally Port, which is basically where the law enforcement pulls in, only permits 2 cars in at a time. And ambulances have to back into that area, and fire trucks and some of those other things can't even enter that portion of it. So that yellow box right there, the vehicle Sally Port, would also be improvement in the booking area, along with some other improvements on the first floor, such as kitchen, property, laundry, and all that to support the population that would be moving down there. The numbers in the smaller right-hand box to the bottom are the numbers that we are forecasted out for that bed space.
So, they always say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and you've gotten way more than 1,000 words out of us today. So, we would like to invite you all to take a tour with Director Sparber of the jail and of Geiger Corrections tomorrow. What time would that be?
It'll be at 10:30. We'll start at the Geiger one, and I have maps. We just need to have an idea of how many are coming, so that we don't have too many folks rolling around there. And then also, we'll just have a pre-conference before we actually go out and do any shoot any of the B-roll or walk around, just so everybody understands what we can shoot and what we can't shoot in that part of it. So I'll get the maps handed out to anybody that wants to participate, and the show-up time will be at 10:30 at the Geiger facility.
Okay. If there are no other questions, again, thank you all for coming, and we believe this is of great importance to our community right now.